Is that too much? Nah. Alright, it's December, clearly. Today I'm coming to you with a video on my favorite books of 2017. I'm doing this because I really love reading. This year I set a goal for myself to read 25 books, which for me, like, I read very slowly, so 25 was kind of a high goal for me, but I'm glad to say that I am completely on track. I have 2 more books to go. I've just had a really good reading year, and there's so many books that I'm excited about, and so I thought I would share with you my favorite ones of this year. Coming in at number 10 is The Darkest Part of the Forest by Holly Black. It's a book that had been on my to-read list for a very long time, and it looked very fairy tale-esque, which is something I'm very much into. And so yeah, I decided to pick it up this year. The thing that got me most intrigued about this book was the blurb on the back. Near the little town of Fairfold, in the darkest part of the forest, is a glass casket. Inside lies a sleeping fairy prince that none can rouse. He is the most fascinating thing Hazel and her brother Ben have ever seen. They dream of waking him, but what happens when dreams come true? In the darkest part of the forest, you must be careful what you wish for. That sounds cool, right? This is a story of a sister and a brother who live in a town called Fairfold, in which fairy tales kind of exist. Like, fairy tale folk live in the forest near their town, and in the forest there's this casket and there's this fairy boy inside. And all their life, the sister and the brother are wondering about, who this fairy prince type character is. And then one day, the casket is empty. And everyone is like, what happened? And then mysterious things start happening. I don't want to give too much away, but it's very fun. It was very fast paced. At first when I started reading, it felt very high school to me. I didn't know whether I was gonna like that. I remember thinking, oh, I should have read this in high school and not now. But I think the story really pulls through because I think the characters are very well written. I love the family bond that you see between the sister and the brother. I think that's something that a lot of books miss, that good family or sibling bond. And this one does that really well. I loved the way the fairy tale world worked in this book and how it kind of intermixed with the real world. And yeah, there's a mystery in the story that, you wanna solve the mystery, and it's really fun. Then at number 9, I have a book that I don't have with me anymore because it's a book I lent from a friend. It is a very famous book. It's Eat, Pray, Love by... what's her name? It's Eat, Pray, Love by Liz Gilbert. I really like this book. I don't know how much I should say about this book because it's been talked about a lot. I think everybody knows this book. It's a memoir of a woman who travels to sort of find herself. She travels to Italy, to India and Indonesia, and in each part of the world she kind of learns her lessons and grows as a person. I particularly loved reading about the time she spent in India because she kind of got in touch with her spirituality, and it's the part where she's like meditating and finding her zen and whatever, and I don't know, that's something that I've always been very interested in. That part got me very inspired. So yeah, if you are into self-discovery and you perchance haven't read this book yet, I'm pretty sure most people have, but if you haven't, be sure to check it out. Then at number 7 we have The Illustrated Man by Ray Bradbury. I've fallen in love with Ray Bradbury's writing this year. This is the first book I read by him. It's a book I really randomly picked up. You can still see I got it at a secondhand shop and it was just really cheap. To be honest, I didn't even know who Ray Bradbury was when I bought this book. It's a collection of short stories. They all have kind of a little bit of a creepy vibe to them. A lot of it has to do with aliens and post-apocalyptic worlds, and there's a little bit of fantasy involved. What I loved about this book and the stories within it were how vivid a picture he can paint. Even though they're very short stories, they really grasp you because of the way they're told. I could imagine all the characters really well. Like, I felt like they were fleshed out characters even though they only took up a few pages, And secondly, I love that this book made me think. That's always what I'm looking for in a book. I love a story with a morale, a story that makes you think about how the world works, how people work. and this book does that. Please read this book, it's very good. Then we go into a little higher of a category. These are books that I've rated 8 out of 10. The 3 books I just talked about, I rated 7.5 out of 10. The next book I'm going to talk about is 8 out of 10. It's The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern. I've been following A Clockwork Reader on YouTube for a long time, and she goes on and on about this book. The way she talked about this book made me so intrigued, and I could not check it out. And so I did, and I'm very, very happy that I did, because the writing in this is so beautiful. This is the story of a traveling circus, but it's not just a circus, it's a very magical place. The story involves all of these characters who are linked to the circus. There's this girl, and she is in a sort of competition with another player that she doesn't know. It's her father who put her in this competition. If you haven't read the book, this probably doesn't make any sense. It is a very strange book, and at times confusing. Sometimes I was very confused with the narrative because it switches characters all the time, and there's a lot of characters in here as well. I have to admit, this was not an easy read for me because I got confused with the characters a lot. However, all the characters in here I found were very interesting. And on top of that, the whole concept of the circus is so mesmerizing. I just really, really wish I could visit this circus. It is one of the most beautiful places I've ever read about. When it comes to fantasy worlds, I want to go to Hogwarts and I want to go here. I want to go to this circus. It's so captivating. That's probably the main reason why this book is so high up on my list. Even now, when I think about this circus, I just get butterflies in my stomach. I want to go there so bad. If you love beautifully described magical places, if you like magical realism, if you like a story that's a little slow-paced and takes its time to really drag you in, you're gonna love this. My next book is also an 8 out of 10 for me, and that is Aristotle and Dante Discover the Secrets of the Universe by Benjamin Alirsanz. I'm really bad at pronouncing names. This is such a cute read. This book is like a warm hug to me. Compared to The Night Circus, this is a very fast read. It's a very easy read. This is a story of 2 boys named Dante and Aristotle. They are high school boys and they live in the same neighborhood. They are both kind of finding themselves, as one does as a teenager. They're both very different, but their friendship is so beautiful. Even though I say this is a very easy, quick read, this book made me very emotional. The characters in this are really beautiful. I loved the 2 boys, but also their families. I think that's what I loved about the book the most. The fact that family was something that was very present in the book, and the fact that the parents were not typecast as the bad guys or people who don't understand their children, because I feel like a lot of YA books tend to do that. Yeah, I loved reading about the relationship the boys had with their families because I found it very realistic. Like, I could relate a lot to these families. Sure, they weren't perfect, and you know, they all had their issues that they had to work through, but in the end they all loved each other. It's just so nice. The last book I rated 8 out of 10 is Fahrenheit 451. I don't actually know how to pronounce the full title. Is it Fahrenheit 451? I don't know. It's by Ray Bradbury. This is my second Ray Bradbury book in the list. It's not even the last. I'm telling you, Ray Bradbury is my man. This is a book that my uncle lent me because I told him that I was falling in love with Ray Bradbury. I know that this is a classic and that many people probably know what it's about, but if you don't, it's about a firefighter, but it's set in the future in which firemen don't stop fires, they start fires. Literally, their job is to put fires in houses, mostly just to burn things, to burn books especially. This particular fireman is starting to question things about this post-apocalyptic society. It's a very intense book. The scariest part was how realistic this future world looked. Like, I can imagine this happening, strangely enough. Even though like some parts were really like a little bit fantastical, the world was incredible. I loved being in the head of the main character. I felt like I could relate to him a lot. The writing in this, again, is so beautiful. The way he describes nature really just makes me really happy. And this book again made me think a lot about society and how the world works. It's just very good. Then we move into the books that I've rated 9 out of 10. The first one is The Hate You Give by Angie Thomas. This book, I don't know whether I have to explain because so many people have been raving about this book this year. I mean, I'm just gonna join the bandwagon and say that I really enjoyed this book. It's a very hard-hitting story. It's probably one of the most contemporary books I've ever read, in the sense that there's a lot of references to current things, and that's something I had to get used to. But aside from that, I cannot find a single negative thing to say about this book. All the characters in this were so real. Like, I could imagine them as just people running around, you know, me being friends with some of them. Like, they were so real to me. And I remembered as I was reading the last couple of chapters, I was getting very sad because I didn't want the book to end. I didn't want to be separated from these characters, and I think that's amazing. Again, this book has a strong focus on family, which is something that I always appreciate. I love books that depict realistic family relationships, and this one definitely does that. And then, of course, there's just the fact that this is an important read for people who live in this day and age, because it's something that is very current and very real, and it's something that needs to be talked about. It really touched my heart, and I implore everybody to read this. Now we're moving into my top 3. The next one I also gave a 9 out of 10. It is A Darker Shade of Magic by V.E. Schwab. This was just great. I love a good fantasy series. With this book, I, for the first time after Harry Potter, felt like this was really worth my while. With this book, I just got so sucked into the story. Love the world building in this. I love how everything works. I love how everything is explained. It really feels like a full-fledged world, which I love because I managed to really be taken away. I also just thought the concept was very original. I think it's a very interesting concept. By the way, the story is about this world in which there are multiple versions of London. It's almost like multiple dimensions of London. We have grey London, red London, black London, and white London. And they are all different versions of the same city. And nobody can travel in between except for people like this guy. His name is Kel, and he is a great protagonist. So he's kind of like a messenger, and he accidentally runs into trouble and just stuff goes down. And he has this great companion called Lila. I love Kel and Lila as a duo. They are so fun to read about. They just have this whole adventure, and I am just completely in love with this book. I have finally gotten my hands on the second book, so I'll be reading that one very soon. This series is just making me very happy. My number 2 favorite book, I also gave this a 9 out of 10. The Peculiar Life of a Lonely Postman by Denis Thériault. This book, this tiny little book, took me completely by surprise. This had been on my Goodreads to read list for a very long time, and I didn't even really remember why I put it on there, but in one of my book buying binges, I just threw it in my shopping cart, and oh my goodness, one of the most beautiful things I've ever read. As you can see, it's very short, but it's written so beautifully. So this is the story about a postman called Bilodo. Bilodo? It's an interesting name. And he, as a hobby, opens letters that he's supposed to be giving to people, and he opens them and reads people's letters to each other. And then after he reads them, he like folds them back up and gives them to people. So basically he's intercepting other people's private mail and going through it before handing it over to them, which is kind of messed up, but also very relatable. Like, that's something I would do. I mean, I wouldn't, but like, I get it, because this guy is he's lonely, and he very much lives by himself, and he's very much like closed off from other people. He doesn't really talk to people much, and he sort of vicariously lives through the mail of other people, and I somehow very much relate to that. I don't know what that means. But anyways, he comes upon these letters that this woman is sending to this man, and through some horrible circumstances, the man who he's supposed to hand the letters to dies. So he's not really able to complete the transaction. So instead of letting the girl know that, he pretends to be the guy, and he starts replying to her letters, and he slowly but surely falls in love with this woman. And he knows it's wrong and he knows it's weird, but like he can't stop himself. Also, the types of letters that this woman is sending are not just letters, they're haikus. And so the postman starts sending her haikus and they start exchanging letters. It is a very interesting story. You are constantly in the head of this postman who is very lonely and very much a thinker and very relatable character for me, even though he is quite a creepy guy. I just felt myself relating to him a lot, how interested he was in other people. I love the writing style as well. The writing style was very, very poetic, which really fit the story because the story is about poetry and haikus that they're sending each other. Which is also why I think it's nice that it's such a short little book, because haiku is a short little poem. I just thought everything about this was great, and I love the ending of this. Yeah, this really moved me. That's my number 2. And then for my number 1 book of 2017, I rated this one 9.5. My favorite book of this year has been Dandelion Wine by Ray Bradbury. I've talked about this book before because this is one of the books I read for my reading marathon of this summer, and I raved about this book already in that video, so be sure to check that out if you want to hear more about this book. But I'll quickly wrap up what I mean by this book is freaking amazing. This book just is summer. Summer in a book. I can't even explain how moved I was by this book. It's about this boy who is going through a summer. He's just growing up. There's not like a big plot going on. There's just a bunch of little plots, you know, of like things that happen in his town with like many different kinds of people. Like there's this old man in a house who loves to like go out and do exciting stuff, but he's not allowed to because he's literally too week. There's this man who wants to build a happiness machine, and it's all linked together really well by this little boy who is just experiencing all of this. Like, you're experiencing everything through the eyes of a little boy, which I think is just very nice. I love books that are narrated by children. I mean, do I have to say it again? Ray Bradbury's writing is just incredible. It's just great. It's just great. I would read this again and again and again and again. I'm just gonna keep saying I loved it, I loved it. So, these are all of my favorite books of this year. I hope you enjoyed me talking about them. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, give it a like and subscribe if you want to. And yeah, enjoy your holidays. I have to work these holidays because in Japan, Christmas is not a national holiday, so I'll be working. Yay! I'll be enjoying my holidays as best as I can. And yeah, have a nice day. Goodbye.